Hi, what is up YouTube? It's your girl Londi and welcome to Study with Londi. On today's episode, we'll be doing a poem analysis video on the poem Shipwreck. So sit back, relax, and let's get into today's video. Line 1 says, Glee, the great storm is over. So Glee, with an exclamation mark there, shows joy, happiness, relief, right? They've survived this great storm. So the great storm being like a terrible storm that was meant to like cause their ship to sink or whatever, but they've survived, right? And the ironic thing about this thing is that 40 people have actually died, right? But in this first part, we're not worried about the 40 people that have died. The ones that have survived are just happy that they have survived. Line 2, 4 have recovered the land. Looking at the diction there, recovered means they have survived. So recovered the land, it means that they've made it back safely onto shore. Maybe let's not use safely, but they've made it back to shore. Yeah. And when we're thinking about the fact that only 4 people have survived, let us think about the fact that this is a ship. They were on a big ship. And not a big ship, but they were on a ship. And one thing about a ship is that they need a lot of people to maintain, the ropes, the whatever. So the fact that there were only 4 people that survived must also lead us to think that there are also so many people that died, because you need more than 4 people to, maintain the ship. Line 3, 40 gone down together. So gone down there is a euphemism for death, right? I'll add the definition of euphemism if you don't know what that means. But the fact that they were on a ship and they've gone down together, means that they have all died. So all the 40 that were on the ship died together. So they all drowned, basically. Line 4, into the boiling sand. So boiling sand actually shows us or reveals to us as the reader how rough and violent and huge the waves were that were actually crashing down onto the sand of the beach, if I can say that, right? And this is shocking to us as someone who's reading this poem, because when this poem started, we were happy that people have survived. So now there's this picture of some violence and some grief because 40 people have died. Line 5, ring for the scant survivors. So when it says ring, the ring there is they're trying to ring the town bell, or they're ringing the town bell to get the attention of the people of the town. Looking at the phrase scant salvation, right, we have to realize a few things from it. Number one, the fact that they use the word scant, scant meaning like few or less or little, means it drives home the force that very few people survived, meaning there were a lot more people on that ship. And with that in mind, the fact that very few people survived means that the celebration that we're having for these 4 people that have survived is now masked, because we're also mourning and grieving the fact that we've lost family members, neighbors, loved ones, you understand? So we can't really fully celebrate the survival of these few because people we hold close to our heart have also died. Line 6, toll for the bonny souls. So the toll refers to the sound of like the church bell. So now we're now at the funeral for the 40 that have drowned, and that the way the bell is sounding is like a slow, repetitive ringing of the bell. So this is a sign of death, of a funeral, And now we have contrast. Now please remember this, because I feel like they like asking contrast, but we have 2 bells that are ringing in line 5 and in line 6, and they're ringing for slightly different reasons. So in line 5, we're ringing the bell because we're celebrating the 4 survivors. They have survived. Yay, let's gather people's attention because we have survivors. And then now in line 6, the bell is ringing because we have death. People, the 40 have drowned. We're now at a funeral. The bell that is ringing there is a sign of death. Line 7, neighbor and friend and bridegroom. Looking at the poet's word choice in this line, it adds a personal touch to the losses. It gives meaning to these losses, right? Or it makes the losses seem more deep, right? Because it's a neighbor that you lost, it's a friend that you lost, it's a bridegroom that you lost. And looking at the bridegroom partner, that should pull at our heartstrings or make us feel even more sad, because it's a bridegroom, you understand? So this person was planning to start a new life with his wife, or was planning to start a new family with his wife, and now he is dead, and we could possibly say that one of the survivors could have been the wife of the bridegroom. You understand? And now she is grieving the loss of her husband. They were together, planning to start a new life together, and now he is dead and she's left to survive and live on without him. Line 8, spinning upon the shoals. So I hope I'm pronouncing shoals correctly, but the shoals, they refer to like shallow water. So what we then get from this part of the poem is that they weren't too far from the shore. They were still very close to home. They hadn't gone to the middle of the ocean, you understand? And this is where it's ironic. How do you drown in shallow waters? You understand? And the fact that they were still close to the shore, still close to home, means that the people could have done something about it. But then why didn't they do something about it? Because the storm was too violent. The storm was this great storm, and that left the people helpless. They couldn't do anything. Line 9, how will they explain the shipwreck? I think line 9 is pretty straightforward. How will they explain the shipwreck? What explanation can they give? Line 10, when winter shakes the door. So winter is associated with death, right? So literally this personification could be referring to the shaking of the doors because of the cold and windy conditions of the great storm when the ship was still there. But figuratively, this personification can refer to the death of the 40, and then the door there would be symbolic of their life. So the children ask, but the 40? I am realizing now that the analysis at the bottom is not the explanation for this one, but just listen, it will make sense. It's pretty easy. So, the initial celebration we were having in the beginning for the 4 survivors will then be put at a stop when the children ask, what about the 40 people? What about the other 40 people that were on the ship? Line 12, did they come back no more? So, this just goes back to the fact that they couldn't give a suitable explanation to the kids because the children are still asking these difficult questions and they're finding it hard. The children are honestly finding it harder to digest this news and to deal with this loss, and they're just in disbelief. Line 13, then a silence suffuse the story. Basically, silence will spread amongst the adults because there's nothing they can say to make it any easier for the kids to come to terms with this loss. And that's where we see the mournful tone of this poem. Well, this is not where we see the mournful tone, but the mournful tone is evident in this part of the poem. Line 14, and the softness, the teller's eyes. Basically this part creates a somber tone because the person that's telling the story is also reminded of the death and loss of all their loved ones and how they have all lost someone they hold close. So the children can now sense how difficult it is for the adults to explain or to talk about this, so they don't ask any more questions because they understand that the 40 have died. Line 16, and only the waves reply. So this just emphasizes that both the children and the adults are silent and there's nothing more they can say. And with the nothing more that is being said, it's the idea that there are no empty cliche words that can be offered to comfort the children or the adults. So themes we have in this poem, we have joy versus grief, celebration versus mourning, saved versus loss, living versus dead, right? And we see this throughout the poem where they want to celebrate the people that have survived, but then they also want to mourn the ones that have died. Looking at the structure of this poem, so this poem has 4 stanzas with each stanza having 4 lines. Now it also has a rhyming scheme of A, B, C, B, D, E, F, E, G, H, I, H, J, K, L, K. It is supposed to read or resemble a ballad. Looking at the stanzas of the poem, so the first and the second focus on the survivors, and then the third and the fourth focus solely on the grief of the people. And a summary for us, so let's summarize this poem. So basically this poem talks about a shipwreck that happened where 40 people have died, but then there's a contrast of the joy of the 4 people that have survived with the sorrow of the 40 that have died. Forgot to film an outro, but let me know guys if you'd also like to answer questions on these poems. And just like that, bye guys.